Hello once again. Cathar Love 180. The Cathar massacres and Gaza, the same. It's basically the same story being retold. Genocide is not new, and people are aware of many genocides, ethnic cleansing and other terms that are used. And of course there's we of us who are well aware of the genocide, the successful genocide against the Cathars over a period of 300 years. Interestingly, with the Cathars, even though they had what they called the Albigensian Crusade, and they fought battles, and even though the Crusaders, on the side of the church from the north, they actually took the territory, they did not conquer the Cathars. The Cathars actually went underground but became stronger. This will also apply to Gaza. I think for any red-blooded males and females to be bombed, and even though you may not have been politically motivated before, but your building was bombed, your friends and family were annihilated, you and some others survived, I think that person would be doing what they can against the enemy, and they would become, in Gaza's situation, a Hamas fighter. Over and over again, the act of war, like in Vietnam, it's the same in Vietnam. They came in, villagers who had no particular affiliations one way or the other, but when they had their village torched, burnt down by the Americans, and they were moved on to some other area, so-called safe area, many of the young men there became Viet Cong, whereas they wouldn't have before. So the story in Gaza, similar to the Cathars, but with the Cathars, which wiped them out, was the fact that the church brought in the Inquisition, and then they questioned the people, and even anyone who went to give evidence for the Cathars, they were termed a heretic as well and condemned to prison or to be burnt. But it was the Inquisition that finally wiped out the Cathars, but that was a complete genocide. But of course what happened, the philosophy, the ideals, the ethics and morals, and the idea and the ideals behind Catharism are still alive, and they're growing stronger. I'm no fan of religion, any religions actually. Buddhism is probably the exception. And I feel strongly that in countries like Australia, England, United States, and the countries in the European Union, they already have freedom of religion. People can practice their faith, whatever their faith happens to be, and usually it's the faith that you happen to be born with. So most people's faith is an accident of birth, which is hardly a great basis for argument or reasoned argument. But what we don't have, and people really need and want, is not freedom of religion, which they have, it's freedom from religion. And freedom of religion means that we don't have to put up ordinary people who are not remotely interested in religion, but who can be highly spiritual, highly mystical, but are not interested, or atheists, but they're simply not interested in formal religions, Islam, Catholicism, or Judaism. They want no part of it, of them, those religions whatsoever. And so it's not freedom of religion, which they already have, it's freedom from religion. It's freedom from religious intolerance. That's one religion's intolerance of another. Because of religious intimidation, if people want to discuss Islam or Judaism or Catholicism, you are called an anti-Semite, or you're an anti-Catholic, or you're anti-Islamic, Islamophobe. And so they use this as their basis for argument. But the plain fact is, religion is divisive. But irrespective of whether it's divisive or what your views are, there is no case legally, morally, ethically for the out-and-out destruction, annihilation of Gaza, and also things that are happening on the Western Bank. So this is happening. What happened to the Cathars 700 years ago, when the last of the Cathar Perfecto was burnt, Gulian Balabast. This is being carried out daily on TV in front of our eyes. Hundreds of people, civilians, mainly civilians, being slaughtered. Now, I don't know about you, but internally, because there's no point externally, I feel that I want to scream. My heart is heavy and my soul is crying for those people over there, civilians. It doesn't matter what their beliefs are or whether they have beliefs or don't have beliefs. You don't go around. It's against the international rules of war to kill civilians. People who can't defend themselves, the old and the young, and they're being killed by the thousands. Who knows how many are under the rubble who can't be counted anyway. So, with me, because I have somewhat of a poetic streak, good or bad, it's what I produce. So I have a poem which I'll read, and it's called Gazing In on Gaza. So I wrote this a few months ago, in January in fact, of this year, 2025. I shall read. Gazing in on Gaza in 2025. To gaze in on Gaza in 2025 is a miracle that anybody is still alive. Futureless, maybe it's the less fortunate who have managed to survive. The gory details of those civilians killed by the IDF the previous day are always shrouded by Israel's national security. It's the IDF's way. For an Israeli airstrike to successfully kill off a Hamas terrorist, a building housing 30 civilians or more will cease to exist. The Holocaust legacy should know raising Gaza is not the way to go. Can't we learn from those previous millions burnt not that long ago? The Holocaust harmed the world's psyche as history did unfold, just as the systemic annihilation of those in Gaza will finally be told. To be etched deeply into the diminishing soul of global humanity. The darkening stain of deep pain is added anew to history's inanity. The Gaza war continues wearily, eerily on each by deadly day. Bombing down to the ground each building is the Israeli strategic way. The truth of the war's ongoing continuance is staring us in the face. It feels it needs to feed the US arms industry, which is a damn disgrace. The shame with the pain, the constancy with the intensity of the barbarity. Didn't we foolishly think we, the civilized world, had evolved finally? But religions are slow poisons without an antidote yet being found. We need the sweet ethics of love, if ever, to bring peace around. Love, respect and tolerance of others will be ever lonely and forlorn when religious hate is taught to babes soon after they are born. So citizens, continue to gird up your loins, arm your nation even more. Peace becomes rarer, for after a war, there's another for an encore. The poem, for good or ill, it's my way of externalising what I really feel really badly about internally. We read about it, we hear about it, we discuss it, we see it on the TV, on the internet. The bombing, the destruction. But I believe that unique and wonderful person, Bernie Sanders, United States Senator, he describes far better than I and gives accurate statistics on just what what is happening in Gaza, the fact that they haven't for some 68 days had food, fuel, water, medicines. Starvation should never ever be used as a weapon of war, and yet there it is, 68 days. How long would you and I survive for 68 days without electricity, without power, without fuel? And yet they're still managing to hang on. Thankfully, there are people now, countries, politicians, standing up, speaking out, taking action. Even those who want to have in the United Nations that Gaza and that Palestine being given United Nations status. So there is people out there doing what they can. But let's Bernie Sanders just say a little what's happening over there.
Let us be clear. Prime Minister Netanyahu's racist and extremist government has waged an all-out barbaric war against the Palestinian people and made life unlivable in Gaza. Within Gaza's population of just 2.2 million people, more than 50,000 have been killed and more than 113,000 have been injured, 60% of whom are women, children, and elderly people. That is 7.4% of the population of Gaza killed or wounded, 7.4% in a year and a half. If those same percentages were applied to the United States in terms of a horrible war where our people were killed or wounded, it would mean that over 25 million Americans would have been killed or wounded. In total, since this war began, 15,000 children in Gaza have been killed, and today there are some 17,000 orphans. But it's not just the dead and the wounded. Israel's indiscriminate bombardment has damaged or destroyed 2/3 of all structures in Gaza, including 92% of the housing units, as you can see from this photo.
It's really terrible what is happening. And people like myself, we feel impotent. We would like to act, we'd like to do something, but it's hard. The destruction of the weapons, mainly bombs, artillery, that has been used to completely demolish the buildings. As Bernie says, 2,000-pound bomb. When that's used, that's got a 350-metre radius, and that will wipe out a city block. That's how powerful they are.
They have used massive 2,000-pound bombs in densely populated Gaza, despite the fact that studies show that 90% of victims of explosive weapons used in a populated area are civilians. These bombs have a blast radius of more than 350 meters, yet Israel has dropped them into crowded apartment buildings, killing hundreds of civilians to take out a handful of Hamas fighters. All of that is illegal and immoral and against American law. The Foreign Assistance Act, which is what we're talking about today, and the Arms Export Control Act, what we're talking about today, are very clear. The United States cannot provide weaponry to countries that violate internationally recognized human rights or block U.S. humanitarian aid. According to the UN, much of the international community and every humanitarian organization on the ground in Gaza, Israel is clearly in violation of these laws.
Bernie at the moment is introducing a bill to stop the $8 billion in aid that the United States government wants to send to the Israelis to further bomb and annihilate what's left. There's 2 million people left, but there's not much of the buildings left. But to further decimate it. Now, every United States politician and lots of other people know that within the United States Constitution, this is illegal for them to give arms to another country that's invading, taking over some other country. It's against the US Constitution. But Donald Trump has called this an emergency situation. It's hardly an emergency to the United States of America. It's an emergency to the people of Gaza, if there's emergency. But he wants this $8 billion of arms to go to Israel to further destroy and annihilate and kill, slaughter, murder the Gazan civilians, as well as people on the West Bank. This is happening before our very eyes. We read about what happened to the Cathars and the genocide which wiped out the Cathars in the north of Italy, the south of France, but other parts of Europe. We read about genocide that has happened by various countries in different parts of the world. The most famous, of course, was the Holocaust. And one would think that the recipients, those on the receiving end of the Holocaust, in other words, the Jewish people, would be against the similar situation in Gaza. And I must say that most Israelis that I personally know are dead against it, very much against it. To them, Netanyahu is the enemy. But the fact remains that there are the Zionists, which is a political arm that wants to take over that area purely for the Israelis. They make it very hard for American politicians to vote against anything that is against Israel. And they say it openly, they warn them openly, that if an American politician votes against the government, they will use the might of their finances and their political power to make sure that politician is thrown out of office, and which has already happened. So it is not the Jewish people, it is the militaristic Zionist within the within the Jewish community, just as there are extremists within the Islamic community who also, they want to destroy Israel. Let's not forget that. So to me, what's happening in Gaza, the West Bank, by the Israeli government, the Zionists, is a repeat of what happened to the Cathars 700 years ago. Genocide, ethnic cleansing, is still with us here today. Sometimes it seems that we haven't made progress, but we have. And one of the great things towards progress is the internet, is the fact that you and I'm here in Sydney, and yet I can communicate with you, whether you're in Norway, United States, England, or wherever it happens to be. You and I, in our own way, can communicate. I can put forward my ideas, you can take them or leave them, whatever, but we have the ability to do that. It's there for us. And in fact, I was reading a comment and I felt it was very incisive, because it said, Israel might win with the bullet, but it will be destroyed by the internet. This is happening more and more, over and over, with the light that's been shone on people all over the world by people who can voice their opinion about politics, about religion. And so many people now are turning away from formal religion, certainly fundamentalist religion, and they're falling away by the light of reason, by the light of argument, by the light of discussion. The fact that one can voice their opinion and not be intimidated politically or religiously. So, in the West, people had their religious freedoms, but I also put it to you that there are many of us who want freedom from religion. We want freedom from religious intolerance. We want freedom from religious intimidation. so that we can speak freely, speak our minds, without being hateful, without being disrespectful. But we should be able to do that without being intimidated, either politically or religiously. Blessings to you all.